Hi everybody, I hope you're all doing well. It's Sunday morning and it's actually a kind of nice day today. Hopefully that will continue. I have been away for a couple of weeks and I've had a very busy couple of weeks with my reading, which I've done a separate video for. So if you want to hear more about that, I suggest you go over to that other video, and I won't be talking about here. So I'm just going to be going straight into the book that I'm here to review. And I am so happy that I can say this now, that I have finally completed the Century Trilogy by Ken Follet by completing Edge of Eternity. It's taken me 6 weeks to get through a nearly 3,000 page trilogy about 5 families across 100 years of our history. I have finally done it. I'm not saying, you know, I'm so happy to say that as in it's been a slug, or you know, or a slog, should I say, or that I've hated it, because I haven't hated it, but it just feels like a big achievement. Basically, I've gotten through War and Peace twice in 6 weeks. That's the equivalent for the page count. So yay, I think that's really cool. So, Edge of Eternity is our third and final book of the Century Trilogy, as I said, where we are following 5 families throughout history. And this one starts with sort of 1950s and goes all the way up to 2008. So it covers a wide span of time. And there is quite a jump between the last chapter and the epilogue being in 2008 when Barack Obama became president. And so this covers, you know, a large range. We're mainly focused on American history, but there is obviously stuff further afield, especially covering the Vietnam War, etc. But yeah, because of the time, we've got very prominent characters, prominent people from history. So we have things that are covered, like Martin Luther King, obviously JFK, Bobby Kennedy is a big character in this book as well. Obviously both of their assassinations, as mentioned, the Vietnam War. We have the Berlin Wall as well, that happened in the 80s with it you know, going down. Sorry. Forgive me, I've just filmed my other video and my voice is now starting to go funny because I rambled on for a long time in that video. So apologies if I start coughing, and I don't have a drink with me to drink, unfortunately, but there we go. So what was I saying? Yeah, the Berlin Wall, and various other things, but those are the key kind of areas, as it were, throughout this book. And of course the massive biggie, because each book of the trilogy has covered a specific war, we've got the Cold War in this book. We had the First World War in the first book, the Second World War in the second book, and now we've got the Cold War in the third book. So lots going on here. I have to say, I don't think that this is as good as the previous 2 books, but, big but, I really enjoyed going through this history. And I think the reason why, especially because I was born in 86. So there was sections of this book where I'm very like, oh my God, this stuff was going on when I was alive. It felt like, wow, okay. It felt different to me than the first 2 books. But I think also there was some real dark shit in this book as well, especially when I'm thinking the specifics to do with the Vietnam War, which was tough to read. Now, let's make this clear. In the first 2 books, there was some tough stuff to read in that, but it felt a bit different in this one. And there was a particular sequence to do with the killing of a family in Vietnam, I'm not going to say specifics, characters affected, etc., because obviously spoilers, but it did feel like when I got to the end of that chapter, I had to close the book for a while and just, because that was a lot. That was a lot to deal with. It very much brought back to mind the second book, especially with what happens with Clara as our key character of that book. But I don't know. This felt different, and I think it is that thing that it is more modern history, because of, as I said, you know, at a certain point at this book, I was like, oh, I was alive at this point. It just felt like, whoa, okay, right. The way in which Ken writes his worlds just throughout his books is something that I've mentioned previously, where he very much wants to be as true to history as possible. So if he is writing about someone from real history and he wants to have a scene between characters, if it's not logical that real person from history to be at the point where he wants them to be, he will not have them there. If it's not logical for that person of history to have said specific series of words, he will not have them say it. He will have them say things that are recorded that actual historical figure said. So, and I love and respect him for doing that. And I think especially at this point, because this is the point of history where recordings are not just in written form, like letters and such. We have actual footage, video footage, audio that kind of stuff. So we have a whole new thing to play with at this point. And I thought especially the ways in which he approached certain things, especially the assassinations of Jack and Bobby Kennedy, he did very well. I've only recently kind of, well, I wouldn't say got into, but had expanded my knowledge of history to do with the Kennedys, because obviously the 60th anniversary of JFK's assassination, and various documentaries being around, and I started watching them, and I watched the film JFK, and I found that really, really fascinating. It hasn't made me go down a JFK rabbit hole, as it were, and you know, read a load of books and explore loads of stuff about it, but it's widened my horizon of knowledge. And so I was really intrigued to see how he would approach that, especially, as I said, this book, American history is extremely prominent, but there is history from other countries as well, which are also key players. As I said, you know, obviously the Cold War and everything that happened there, and the fall of the Berlin Wall, etc. But yeah, the American history, especially the association to the Cold War and the Vietnam War, was very important in this book. So yeah, what I was saying, well, I've completely fallen, like rambling on and losing my point here. I thought the way that he approached certain things was done as sensitively as he possibly could, but he was also completely realistic to the reality of what happened and what we have public written knowledge of, as well as I said, various recordings, etc. As always, I loved the way that he writes women, especially in this book. And this time, so we had Billy as a key character in the first book, we had Clara as a key character in the second one, and this time we had Rebecca, or which, you know, obviously my name. So I was like, oh, we got Rebecca that we're going to be following this time. And her story is really interesting one I didn't expect the route for it to take, actually. I don't want to say what her story is, etc., because obviously spoilers, and because this is the third book of a trilogy. There have been so many characters who through 100 years of history I have followed, so I don't want to, because if I tell you who she is, that will reveal stuff, spoilers from the second book, etc. So I don't want to go there. So I'm being as vague as I possibly can in order to protect you who want to read the trilogy. If you want to look it up, you look it up. You go online, you read the blurb from the back of the books, do what you want to do, but I'm not here to spoil that stuff for people who do not want to be spoiled. Rebecca I found really interesting. She is someone who her world has been one particular way her entire life, and she thought she knew what her world and her life was, and then all of a sudden they go, no, and everything flips, everything changes. And that thing of, to quote Hamilton, the world turned upside down, it's so true. When you thinking about how, especially from the 1950s on, remembering the fact that the way in which we got information was very different, and the way in which the government went, this is the ideal life, this is the American dream, this is what you want to have. Okay, I was about to use a word and then I'm thinking, is that a good word to use? And now I think it actually is the right word to use, even though it's not a good word. Brainwashing is the word that came to mind. Now, I'm not saying that everyone got brainwashed, but if you look back, especially at adverts of the American dream, and even across the world, it was a thing of, a man's role is this, a woman's role is that, children do this, you are expected to do that. That is what you were told, that was how you were raised, that is what you do. And so Rebecca's very much been caught up in that. She'd never questioned things, and then being told, well, actually, this is this, that is that, and you are slap bang in the middle of this, and now that you know that, that means that this is going to have to happen and you're going to have to deal with that. Just like completely throws her. I found her journey very, very interesting, to say the least. I feel like, though, this is the difficult thing, because now that I've finished the trilogy, I said that the first book I think was better than the second. They were very close, but I think the first one was better. But this one I think is below the second, and as I've been thinking about it, the second and the first have actually met equal measure, as I've reflected through the journey that I've taken. So it was almost like 1 and 2, and now, instead of first place, second place, they are drawn first, and this is now the default second place. It's not a case of that I wouldn't read this one again, because I would, but I think I would have the same situation where I would enjoy reading the first 2 more than reading this one. But this one has got great merit to it, and maybe it's just because this is so close to me and obviously my life, because I was born, as I said, in 86. I was born in the middle of this world, of this story, this book. It just feels like, it's like the thing, reality has hit, and I'm like, oh my god, even though I know these key events from history were from our world, even though I know that this is not a fantasy world or something, when you're reading stories from the past, you can, or at least with me, I think with the first 2 books, I cannot help but feel like this is a fictional thing. This is a fictional thing. I know it's related to real life, but it's fictional. It's separate. And then this one went, bang, you are a part of this world now. Bang, you're right there. bang. And I just, maybe that's it. Maybe I was just a bit like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, I have actually collided with this world. And I felt a little thrown by that. So maybe that's why I the immersive feeling of the first and the second book is more prominent to me than the third one. And that's why I have this strange feeling about it. I don't know what it is. But it's not a bad book in any way. I loved the journeys that the characters take. I felt really emotional at the end. I thought the ending line is absolutely perfect way to end such an epic trilogy. I loved the just as with the first two, the way that he balances the combinations of what is happening in the various countries. He always makes you care about every character, even the nasty bastards that are around. He makes sure that he covers a range of things, not just talking about the big events, but the knock-on effects of that. So, for example, as mentioned in the previous book, like say in Germany and such, with obviously the various bombings and all that lot, how civilians were impacted by that, and not just talking about obviously bombings, people dying and trying to get food and that, people having to protect themselves from possibly being attacked and killed and raped by and such by other civilians and such in order to survive, that kind of thing. He never forgets that those things in history happened, and he presents them because these are valid things that happen and shouldn't be forgotten. So yeah, sorry, I'm having this problem lately. I'm realizing as I'm getting older, I will go off on like a trail and then I will just forget where I'm going, and then I'm just like empty headspace. Just hit just then. But yeah, it has so many ticks, just as with all of his books. But I had this weird disconnection, and I think it is because it's like it collided with my world, with my reality, and it just felt like, well, I've only ever read Ken Follet books before this trilogy where it's the Knightsbridge collection, so it's like even the last book. And when I say the last book, I'm talking about not the one that was published in October that I haven't read yet. I mean the one before that, because I haven't read the one from October yet. Waiting for the paperback. August, come quicker, please, so I can read that book. Column of Fire is the title of the book I'm talking about. That one was the 1500s, and so you're talking like 100 years of history between each book. So, but that's still 1500s is the most recent event, as it were, before the book that came out in October. So yeah, so it's nowhere near what I've read in this trilogy, and then it just goes boom with my reality, and it felt like, oh shit, Ken Follett. It's not so far past history again. It threw me off. It threw me off. But I will defend this book with every breath possible that I have to say it is a brilliantly executed book. And I found the way in which he decided to explore historical figures who we have, as I said, audio and video footage of, that he did not have for other historical characters and such in the previous books. How he played with that was very, very interesting and very fascinating to me. So yeah, it felt sometimes that I was just a bit jarred by this book, but that was not a bad thing, I feel. It just means that the first two books have more of a preference for me in my mind. But I think if I were to step away from this book and reflect more, and because I finished this last night, just so you're aware, so it's not like it's been a few days and then I've been able to sit in that, if I were to reflect more, or maybe even like a couple of weeks or a month, I might feel more of a balance with the first two books than I do right this moment. But yeah, I enjoyed it, and it really was an epic ending for a phenomenal story about an amazing range of characters who I marvel at how Ken was able to keep track of all of this stuff that he wrote. And yeah, just, oh my gosh, I thought it was great, and I can't think anything more to say to that. It was just, as I said, you know, I had this jarring feeling throughout, but I thought the way he structured it, the way his approach and everything, he did a phenomenal job with it. I just prefer the first two books in my gut. So, and yeah, I've got to wind up because I've got to go to Mum and Dad's house, so I'm running late. So anyway, those are my thoughts of Edge of Eternity by Ken Follet, the final book in the Century Trilogy. My usual questions: would I read this again? Yes, but as I said, you know, I'd like to have a bit of time apart to fully reflect before I were to go back to this, and I think I would have to read this as the whole trilogy again, because now I know where it goes and such. I think seeing the whole history of all these families from the very beginning will be a different experience entirely. So yes, I think, yeah, I definitely would. Would I recommend this to anyone? Yeah, I definitely would. As previously mentioned, you know, if people have got an interest in history, especially American history from the 1960s onwards in a fictional form, definitely this book, for sure. So yeah. So would I read any more of Ken Follett's work? Well, that's a silly question, because of course I will. I love Ken Follett, and I'm so excited for August to get the next Kingsbridge series book in paperback form, because I've got all of the others in paperback, so it has to be in paperback in order to fit on my bookshelf. It's the way I am. So yeah, I'll definitely be getting his next book in paperback form in August. So there you go, guys. I finished the trilogy. Yes. And now I can start exploring other books, which is really, really great. I feel so good having finished the trilogy. So, and now I can, yeah, explore. It'll be probably very weird reading another fictional, another book, or just another book in general that's different from Ken's writing after 6 weeks of just being absolutely immersed in his writing. So, yeah, we'll see how I feel about that. But anyway, have you read this book? I'd love to know what you think. Leave me a comment in the comments box below. Give me a thumbs up, thumbs down, tell you each side. And I'll be back with my thoughts on my next read, which is a non-fiction book. It is Dead Famous by Greg Jenner. An unexpected history of celebrity from the Bronze Age to the silver screen. Very much looking forward to this. So Greg does an absolutely fantastic podcast called You're Dead to Me. And also he was a historian on the TV sketch show, which I absolutely love, called Horrible Histories. So yeah, we'll see what I think of his book Dead Famous. I don't think this can take me long at all. I wouldn't be surprised if I'm back with you next weekend with this. So yeah, I'll let you know what I think of that as soon as I'm done. All right then, guys. Bye.